In my last video where I built this belt grinder, I ran into a lot of places where I needed a radius around a hole. And of course, the belt grinder would have been the perfect way to do this, but, well, I didn't have it. But now that I do, I decided to build a really simple jig for it to make this super precise and easy. This is the table where my workpiece rests. There's an interchangeable pin. It's tool-free. So I can swap that out for any size pin, which will match any size hole, and then a nice long lever for precise control, so I can bring that up to the belt, and then just rotate my workpiece around that pin. Back here there's a stop, so that I can just bring that into exactly the right spot and not have to worry about this position while I'm rotating my part. So yeah, let me give you a demo. So here's the piece that I want to grind the radius into. I've already drilled the hole. I can just drop that onto the pin, and I'm ready to grind it. So this makes it very, very clean and very precise. Much better than I could ever do by hand. Let's get started by making the lever first. I really want this shape for the handle. So I went ahead and made the bar. It's just got a 3/8 hole drilled in it. The end is ground, and yeah, that was done entirely with the belt grinder. Then the handle goes on the bottom of that, like so. This little spacer goes here. Then I made this piece, which is just drilled and ground, and I get it, I need a radius jig to do this. So that goes there, and then I'm gonna make a new one of these that's bigger. So it'll go here. You get the idea? I just realized that I never gave any context as to what that green thing is. That was my prototype for the table and the interchangeable pin system. So I've just got this bolt tightened down on here, and then the spacer just set in between. If you were wondering why I put the handle on the bottom instead of the top, that's so that I have clearance for my hand when it's horizontal. If it was up here, I'd be hitting that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make the new version of this. I'm going to make that out of 5-inch round. .1018 likes to be cut with a pretty deep cut. It doesn't do well if you try to just take off a thousandth or two. So this is 10 thousandths, and I'm hoping that'll be my finished cut. This is going to be the surface of the table that your workpiece is going to rest on. So it needs to be a decent finish. Beautiful. I'm super happy with the finish on the surface. However, the finish on the outside, I could not keep this from chattering no matter what I did. I don't know if it's just because this is as big as my lathe. These ways are 5 inches apart, and this is 5-inch round. Is that the problem, or you lathe guys? Am I doing something wrong? This is the table surface, so I need to go ahead and drill and cut the taper in the hole here for where that pin is gonna go, because obviously that needs to go in the table surface. Now I need to bore a little taper on that, but I need a super tiny little boring bar for this. I looked around online a little bit, and all I can find is solid carbide, and I'm afraid I just don't know how to use it well enough. I'd break it. But I have a belt grinder and a piece of high-speed steel. So I have my little homemade boring bar ready to cut that taper. And when I'm done, if I do everything right, this pin should fit so that this surface here is flush with the table surface. That'll take a while. "31 minutes. Well, that's all smoothed out. I'm gonna cut this down to just a 1/4 inch here, about halfway down. So I'll take off about half of the weight of this part. Yeah. The time lapse you just watched was over an hour of work, and you see how much is done? Okay, I got all that material hogged off, so this is a 1/4 inch thick now. Now I just need to reduce the diameter of this part to exactly 2.5 inches. So I got the table all finished up. Now I need to make the pin retention system that's going to hold these pins in place. You can see inside of there's 2 little balls that are spring-loaded toward each other. So those catch on this little ledge on the pin, that little 45-degree angle right there that my fingernail's touching. So now I need to do that same thing on here. And this is really the reason I turned this down rather than using full diameter, so that I can actually cross drill through this piece. I'm turning the workpiece between each 1/8 inch of drilling or so, just to ensure that if my table is out of square to the bit, the hole will still end up straight. The numbers are in my favor this time because I'm going to use 5/16 balls so that they don't fall out of this 1/4 inch hole, and 5/16 just happens to be the right size for tapping 3/8. So I'll tap this hole 3/8, then I can use a set screw to hold the spring in. As you can probably tell from the video, I definitely need a new tap. This 3/8 tap is in really bad shape. So now each side gets a ball, a little spring, and a set screw. And now these set screws can be turned in or out to adjust how tight those springs are, to adjust how hard it is to put the pin in and out. Okay, set screw, spring, ball, ball, spring, set screw, and it works. Holds it super rigid and nice, and yet I could pull it out with just my fingers. And if it ever does get stuck too tight, the hole goes all the way through, so I can punch it out from the bottom. The nice thing about using a taper on that pin is that if it gets some dirt in it, it'll still work. It won't go quite as deep because it'll bottom out on the dirt before it bottoms out on the taper, but it'll still work. If it was just a round pin, then I would either have to way undersize the pin so it fit really loose to accommodate for some dirt, or else when it got dirt in it, it wouldn't work at all. Now that I've put all this work into it, I'm going to cut it in half along that line. See, the belt has to be able to come to right here so that I can actually radius small parts like this. All of this material out here has to go. That blade better not wander. Oh yeah, I always try to make these blades last as long as I can. Well, that was fairly uneventful. If I had known how little this would actually wander, I wouldn't have needed to cut quite so far from the hole. But I want to be able to radius a 1/2 inch diameter, so that means I need to grind this back to about here. And by here, I mean 1/4 inch from the center of the hole. I'm going to go ahead and mount this down to there. This middle hole is just to continue this hole, so if the pin ever gets stuck, I can poke it out of there. These other 2 holes are for bolts, so I need to drill and tap a couple of holes in here for those bolts to thread into. So looking at it upside down now, what I want to do for the stop is weld this little piece onto here. I don't think I'll be able to get a real strong weld on this bar with my little welder, but it'll be good enough for this. And, well, that's how the stop will work. Here I'm just drilling and tapping for an adjustment bolt that'll be used for the stop. So now that bolt gives me a nice positive stop that's also adjustable. And also makes a weird sound. So now I'm turning the pin, and I've designed this so it can all be turned from one position using one cutter in one position. So everything is turned with the same cutter. I don't have to move the cutter. I don't have to change the angle of the compound. I don't have to move the part in the chuck or anything. So it's pretty easy to make. And that's important because I might make a lot of these in the future. And it's done. So now to use the jig, you just have to drill a hole in a piece of metal that you want to radius, put it on the peg, loosen the bolt that's holding this, and just slide this all the way against the belt and tighten that back down. And now I like to just twist the bolt in a little bit to give it a little bit of clearance. Now, if you really want to make it look nice, then for the final cleanup, tilt the machine. And now you get those marks going around the end instead of across the end. I can see myself actually using this technique with it tilted 45 degrees. The camera just won't pick this up. It doesn't do it justice at all, but it looks really cool. Thanks for watching.